Hey, David Bruce here with another 3 for All, and this is 3 Dan Huff Licks from 1989. And Dan Huff is this monstrous, guitarist, and songwriter, producer, engineer, and, very, very exciting musician if you're not familiar with Dan Huff's name. But you've probably heard his music somewhere because he's been very active and very successful since the late 70s, technically. And he kind of got his start as a studio musician doing session work. And he was kind of the second call to Steve Lukather for a lot of years. So if Luke couldn't do the session, Dan Huff would do it. And his, list of credits and album appearances, whether he's playing guitar or he's a producer or a songwriter, he's worked with everybody. So here's an image just kind of giving you a clue of some of the people that he's worked with, which is really impressive. So aside from his session work and studio work, early on, I mean, he was a founding member of the band Whiteheart, the Christian rock group, and also a founding member of the group Giant. And if you're not familiar with Giant, they've had about 3 or 4 albums, I think. But the two that you definitely need to check out are Last of the Runaways and Time to Burn. And Last of the Runaways is great. And the solo we're going to look at actually comes from the song I'm a Believer, which is on Last of the Runaways. And if you haven't heard that, it'll blow your mind, especially if you're into technical guitar and shred. And if you like Lukather and you're not really sure if you know Dan Huff, you're going to like Dan Huff too, because their styles are different, but they're very similar. And, they're similar in certain areas. But Time to Burn from 1992, just really quick, that's kind of one of the last major label releases, kind of notoriously bookmarked, or there's like an asterisk or whatever. That's one of the last major label releases in the 1990s, right before everything shifted toward, alternative music. So the album was released. It has a huge, production. It had a big budget. You can hear, I mean, definitely, it's a well-crafted album. It's a great album. But it got no marketing push. It was not really played on the radio. It was not played on MTV. They just kind of released it, and then they immediately shifted gears and focused on alternative and grunge. And so it kind of got left in the dust. And if you haven't heard Time to Burn, that's a great album. The licks from this lesson come from a bootleg. I think it was in London, England, in 1990. And it's really just the intro to the song I'm a Believer from Giant. And I'm basically going to reference the album, like the studio version of that solo, which it's about, 45 seconds or a minute, like an intro guitar solo, and then the song starts. But it's really tasty, and there's all kinds of cool licks and stuff hiding here. And, in the video clips and stuff that I kind of chopped up to go along with this video, you can hear he's playing it. The performance is a little different than, the studio version, which that's common when you hear a live version of something. So he changed just a few of the licks, just slightly. And then you can also find a reunion concert in Nashville, Tennessee on YouTube. And I think that was from like 2017. And Giant reformed and played some local shows. And Giant's technically a Nashville, Tennessee band. So that's kind of where they originated from. And that's where a lot of Dan's, production work and songwriting and engineering and stuff behind the scenes. He's done a lot of that work in Nashville. But he used to be, like an 80s studio guy, back in the day, like in the 80s. But anyway, and you can also find a clip of Giant performing this song on the Arsenio Hall show. And that would have been in 1989. I think it was like October of 89. And you can find that on YouTube too. Okay, the first lick is actually like the second phrase of this intro solo. And he's doing some double stop bends and some little like Hendrix movements. And then there's a crazy 2-whole step bend on the A string. So definitely watch out for that when we get there. But it looks and sounds like this. But it starts off with this double stop bend here on the 14th fret on the G and the B. So he's kind of playing with that double stop bend and coming down on the 14th fret there on the D string. And then he does the slide up to nowhere, which is the kind of the Hendrix lick here. So he just slides off. You can stop somewhere around like the 19th to 21st fret. You don't have to go all the way up, but just slide up to nowhere and then just go back and grab that G note there on the 12th fret. And then he just comes down basically the, E minor blues. And then you're going to grab this G note on the 10th fret there on the A string, and I'm going to reinforce that with my index and middle finger. So I'm using 2 fingers. You could do it with 1 finger, but that might hurt your wrist. You might actually injure yourself. So be careful with this bend. This is not for beginners or weak-handed players out there. You really got to have some strength and control to make this bend happen. So we're going to bend this G all the way up to a B. So that's 2 whole steps. Think David Gilmour, like another brick in the wall. But we're not on a treble string, we're on the A string. So we're going to bend the A string up 2 whole steps. Like that. That's a big bend. You really got to manhandle that string, or woman handle it. Crazy. If you're familiar with the solo, the next lick might be what you're looking for. This is that fast, shreddy lick that he does right after the phrase we just looked at. So after that ginormous bend on the A string, he does this. He just kind of hits that A power chord and lets it ring, and then you'll hear this crazy, terrifying lick. Slowly, that lick is basically E Dorian based, and he's really just kind of doing the sequence idea in the beginning, and then runs up the scale, and then he slowly kind of retards a little bit toward the end, and then he grabs that final bend way up there. So slowly it's something like this. Something like that. Let me do that one more time. At the end, just kind of make it sound like you're going up, like that first hill on a roller coaster, and just slow that phrase down as you go up. Next lick is the next phrase from the solo, and it looks like this. And I'm a big fan of different types of bending licks and learning some different ways of bending strings. And this is a cool kind of bluesy rock bending idea. And he's really just sliding from that B note down to A. So he's kind of turning that like into a little blues phrase right there. And then right here, he's going to bend this E up to an F sharp, and then you're going to grab this G right there, and then you're going to basically kind of pre-bend that E note that's bent up, and then release it. So there's this weird, kind of reminds me of like a cross between something you'd hear from Stevie Ray Vaughan and Steve Vai, kind of mixed together. Something like that. It's a very expressive phrase though, so let me run through that one more time there. And one more time, a little bit slower. Here's a bonus lick from the solo, and it's the very next phrase or lick from this intro. And it looks like this. And once again, he's adding these little Hendrix elements, some double stop, kind of hammer-ons and pull-offs with slides. There's this kind of smeared bend and release lick that's definitely a notorious Hendrix lick. So slowly we got this. And then right there he's going to do that Hendrixy bend and release lick. And they were basically bending the 15th fret on the B up. And then you're going to catch the 15th fret on the G, and then you're going to release the bend on the G string. So that's very tricky. And just think of Red House and some Hendrixy, licks, and you can definitely kind of get an idea of what that lick's supposed to sound like. And then he starts doing these hammer-ons with double stops, and then also a slide right afterward. Basically ends with the C to D and then hops over to the D string and trills between A and B. Like that. Something like that. Really cool lick, and it's tricky too because you have to kind of maneuver around and you're bending differently and also adding those hammer-ons and slides. So it'll definitely keep you on your fingertips. That's going to wrap this look at 3 licks from Dann Huff from 1989, and I'm definitely a big Dann Huff and giant fan, and I definitely respect, all the work, production work and engineering and songwriting, session and studio appearances on all this, music. I mean, Dann Huff is kind of a, misunderstood or kind of obscure guitar legend. He's a very important and essential guitarist, but a lot of people don't even realize who he is, and they're like, well, who's Dann Huff? And it's like, well, I'm pretty sure you probably heard him play guitar and you didn't even know, like on the radio or on TV or the soundtrack to a movie. But if you haven't heard Giant, definitely run out and listen to Last the Runaways and Time to Burn. They'll blow you away. I mean, they're great, great songs, great guitar parts, great guitar tone, solos and riffs and fills, for days. But it's really, good music too. Anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.